right. Well, I hope that last section was fun, and now we're going to look at it a little more, what we did. Just take a little bit of a break because we went at a fast pace, and look at syntax a little, which is really boring sounding, and it is kind of boring and annoying, but it's important. Yeah, that's right, it's important. So in ES6, is ECMAScript is just another word for JavaScript. Forget about it. It's basically a type of JavaScript. And they come up with versions every year's ES6, ES7. I'm sure there's more coming, and there's just going to be more, where they add some different functions, different syntax, simplify things, make common functions into built-in functions. So we have a few different things. There's filter, or we're also going to use a dot map, which is going to help us get pieces of an array filtered out in just a very concise manner. I'm not going to use these all the time, sometimes because I'm still getting used to them, but I think it's important for you to know about a lot of these, so because you're going to encounter them in other people's code or in code you're reading online, and if it looks a little strange, it may simply be ECMAScript. There's also this kind of nice function thing that we used briefly last time, which kind of simplifies the way you can call a function. And also there's a constant variable meant for basically variables that aren't variable, so they're not going to change, just constants. And this might seem, unnecessary, but there are, theoretical reasons behind it, and you will see them used. So just get used to kind of copying the type of ways that you see these used and getting familiar with it. And we're going to go into our code a little bit and add a dot map function, not a dot filter, but a dot map. And we're going to put this in and maybe define a couple constants as well. So in this case, I'm never going to change, for instance, the welcome to my course. I think I want to always have that displayed when it comes to my little, honestly, terrible page. I'm probably never really going to change it. So why don't we just make it a constant? So all you have to do is, boom, constant. And it changes in my syntax, and let's just see if that renders. And everything looks just hunky-dory. So that renders fine, nothing's changed. The one difference here is that you can't actually change the array, and that's not quite right, because for instance you can push a value onto it and it will render just fine. That's supposed to be again, but whatever. You'll see it does render, which is just fine. But that's not really the point. The point is that you can't do this, for instance. You can't change that to just hi. You will get an error. Right? So that's the point of a constant. You're defining something that's not going to change. And defining it that way simply encourages people, and forces them, in fact, to not change your variable, which keeps your code organized, which is very useful. Now, when I was just doing that, I noticed that I actually have a little error going on here. And this is from the last section, but it's important. Why don't we go over it? It doesn't prevent the rendering. Again, it's like the class error that we saw previously. It doesn't actually prevent rendering, but you don't really want to have these errors. There's complicated reasons why not, and it will catch up with you. So it's best to avoid having these errors. These warnings, yeah, you can go through them if you want to be pedantic. And they could be useful for helping you with your syntax. But these errors you should take care of them, even if it's rendering. So in this case, it says each child in an array or iterator should have a unique key prop. And this is just another, like the class name thing, this is just a thing you kind of have to get used to in React. Whenever we make a loop of any kind, we have to give it a key prop, a unique key prop, as it says there. And this is just because of the way that React is going to handle and store these. They need each to have a different object name. So in this case, we know that each of these words is different. So I'm just going to make the key word, and that should make that go away. And there it is. And do we actually see the key on these? You don't actually even see it, but it is crucial for making sure you don't get so many errors and you don't ultimately break your application. Okay, so we used constant, and that we just had to go aside to fix that error. And now we're going to go and actually change this into a different type of loop and make it more integrated with what's going on here. It can be nice to really have a lot going on in just a few lines of code. It's quite satisfying. So, and it's important because you need your code to be small and very easy to understand what's going on with minimal complexity, so others can work on your code, and so you can come back to it after you haven't worked on it a long time and see right away what's going on. So here we're going to use that .map. So the array that we have here is already, it is an array, so it gets now a .map function. And .map is going to allow us to have an item. In this case, well, it's actually going to be the word. And then we use this syntax to put it out. And inside, we are returning a value. So this is basically a function, this little section with this one curly brace, that we return something in. So we could actually put a function in there, but we're going to put it all right into one so you can see instantly what's going on. And in this case, I'll just render this right away. So it's saying for every word in array, return this p tag with the keyword with word in it. And we've now, as you see, we're just going to get rid of the whole array to render variable and just have array. Run that, and we should get the same result. And there it is, the same result, which is great. So that is a nice little loop that I love to use. I find it's very nice, very easy to understand, and very useful when it comes to complicated rendering, because you can also write code in here. You know, if you have if statements or that kind of thing, you can execute a few more in there, which can be useful. Now, the last thing I want to do is, again, just go back to a slightly different way that you can call these functions. In this case, this is probably the simplest way to do it, but you could also, if you didn't even want to make this function, because sometimes you might end up, for such simple operations, you might end up making a huge list, and you're in one component, and the whole point of a component is to kind of stay compact. And if you add all these minor events that are just one-liners, it just kind of ruins that. And so we're just going to get rid of that altogether, and we're going to put it the same effect. We're just going to do it with a little bit more advanced syntax. So again, this is just what we saw up here, where we're running the function and it's going to return a result. And what we're going to do is we're going to console log, clicked. And that's what we were doing before, but just to get used to, that's how I'm going to do it throughout this. Most of the time, there are going to be exceptions when sometimes we're going to pass information back to methods in the component, and that's going to be, you can't do it so simply through here, and you don't want this to get out of hand. You don't want to be using writing whole functions inside here. You really, if you're going to do it this way, keep it in one line. Otherwise, do put it up here, because ultimately people are going to be confused about where you're keeping your functions, and the norm in React is to keep them here. So that's just a little bit of ES6 syntax, just to get us ready. And in the next section, we're just going to go over a few of the things that we did and look at a couple bugs, and I'm going to give you a little review project as well.